Hello everyone, so in this video I want to explain that difference between unbalanced forces and balanced forces. Balanced forces typically occur when equal forces are acting on one object in opposite directions. Unbalanced forces occur when a net force is acting on an object. From your notes, you might recall that a force is a push or pull and is measured in newtons. You also should know that net force is the overall force acting on an object. We typically find the net force by either adding or subtracting the forces acting on an object depending on the direction in which they're acting on. So let's look at this scenario where we have two people in a tug of war. We clearly are able to see that the forces are acting in opposite directions, but what is the actual force that they're putting on this rope? So one gentleman is using 10 newtons, the other is also using 10 newtons of force. So they are equal forces acting in opposite directions, which means that this is a case of balanced forces. If we do the math to calculate the net force acting on this rope, we find that the net force here in this case is 0, so there is no net force acting on this object. These two people are not going anywhere. Now here is another scenario to look at. Here we have three people in a tug of war. Two people on one side, one person on the other. You might initially assume that the person who's yawning is the one who is winning this tug of war. But let's figure out how much force they're all putting on the rope. So the person who's alone is using 10 newtons of force on the rope. The gentleman in green is using 2 newtons, and the guy in the blue is using 8 newtons. Alright, so now we just have to figure out, is it balanced forces or unbalanced forces? Alright, when we do the math, we find out that this is actually a case of balanced forces. Now let's look just a little bit closer. 8 newtons and 2 newtons for the two guys together on one side. We know that that gives us 10 newtons. So when we subtract 10 from 10, we find that the net force is 0 newtons, meaning that there is no net force in this scenario, and these guys aren't going anywhere. Let's look at this last scenario. Here we have 4 people on one side of the rope, 3 people on the other side of the rope. We probably want to assume that the side of 4 people is the side that is going to ultimately win, but again, let's look closer and see how much force they're actually putting on this rope. All right, the side of 3 people has 50 newtons, and the side with 4 people has 40 newtons of force. So right away, you should probably be able to tell that this is a case of unbalanced forces. All right, so let's do the math and find out what the net force is. 50 minus 40 gets us 10 newtons, so the net force in this case is 10 newtons, and we would actually say 10 newtons to the left. Alright, so slowly that group would start moving to the left because that is the direction of that net force. Alright, so just as a quick recap, here we have our definitions of force: push or pull. Balanced forces, equal forces acting on an object in opposite directions. Unbalanced forces occur when a net force is acting on an object, and net force, overall force acting on an object. Alright, keep those different scenarios in mind, and please just make sure that when you are working on page 9, that you very clearly draw the direction of the net force if there happens to be a net force in those scenarios. Thank you.